morning, and thank you for joining this online virtual service of the First Unitarian Church of Alton on the 16th day of August in 2020. I'm Robin Berkeley, and I'm doing double duty today as the worship associate and the featured speaker for today's service. We are a small but mighty lay-led congregation located in Alton, Illinois. Due to the pandemic, our services are located online on our church YouTube page. We hope to see you at our Castle on the Hill sometime soon when we can return to worship together. In the meantime, we welcome everyone to this virtual home of comfort, spirit, justice, and hope. We are Unitarian Universalists. If you have a candle nearby, please join me as I light my own and recite our unison words for the chalice lighting. We hallow this time together by kindling the lamp of our heritage. Our opening prayer today was written by Tyler Knott Gregson. Touch the ink on you to all the ink on me. Lend your shading to mine and let the pictures melt into one. I need your flowers in my trees. You need these mountains to give them shade. We are more than the sum of our parts. We carry with us the joys and sorrows of our days. We gather together, even virtually, to experience the warmth of community. You may choose to sit in reflection right where you are. You may choose to share your thoughts, joys, and concerns on the YouTube page or even in our private group, UU Friends on Facebook. We also welcome you to join us at our virtual coffee hour after this service to share conversation and receive support if you need to connect with others. Please take a few minutes to reflect on your joys and sorrows and send out strength and love to those who need it at this time. Our reading today is titled 14 Things Nobody Told You About Being Creative and was written by Andrew Metal. It can be found on www.entrepreneur.com. Product development, web design, freestyle rapping, writing, cooking, art, music, to the way you make your bed in the morning. What are we talking about here? everything. From forward-thinking tech product managers such as Ryan Hoover to the barista who serves your coffee art, we all have creativity within us. Here's a hit list of 14 things nobody told you about being creative. Number 1, anyone can do it. If you want to be creative, do it. Forget the prejudice that creativity is saved for the select few. With a willingness to learn and desire to start, you can be creative, so get going. Number 2, creatives steal. Art is theft, said Pablo Picasso. Actually, I took the concept for this column's title from the book Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. My title was his subtitle and became the inspiration to write this piece. How's that for meta? This is seen in all disciplines, with glaring examples surfacing in hip-hop. How many times have you heard your favorite rapper's chorus, soundbite, or voice in another rapper's song? Pablo Picasso is often quoted as saying, "Good artists copy, great artists steal." From web design, writing, music, to cooking, there are endless examples of creatives borrowing from one another. Number 3, freestyle rappers should be your creative role model. Speaking of rap, there was a study that shows brain scans of freestyle rappers with the goal to understand the neuroscience behind the skill. We think what we see is a relaxation of executive functions to allow more natural, defocused attention and uncensored processes to occur that might be the hallmark of creativity, says Alan Braun, a neuroscientist at the U.S. National Institute of Deafness and Other Communication Disorders in Bethesda, Maryland. In layman's terms, the rappers are able to remove themselves from the logical thinking that happens in their brain so that the creative side could come through. Mind blown. Number 4, it can be a learned skill. There are endless research studies that have shown that creativity is a learned behavior. One of my favorite studies was done by George Land. In 1968, Land tested the creativity of 1,600 children. He retested the same children at 10 years of age and again at 15. The results were astounding. Test results among 5-year-olds, 98% creativity. Test results among 10-year-olds, 30% creativity. Test results among 15-year-olds, 12%. Same test given to 280,000 adults, 2%. What we have concluded, Land wrote, is that non-creative behavior is learned. Wow, this should give us even more reason to go against societal norms. Number 5, it can be improved. Here are some ways to improve it: experimenting, exploring, questioning assumptions, using imagination, and synthesizing information. Number 6, ADHD is good. Latent inhibition is a person's ability to ignore irrelevant information in the world, an important skill in navigating such a complex place. However, people with low latent inhibition, such as those with ADHD, have less of a filter and are more likely to notice seemingly irrelevant information around them. You could say their logic force is constantly subdued. As a result, they are more likely to make unexpected connections. Number 7, all ideas matter. One idea can create a domino effect. In his book, Where Good Ideas Come From, Stephen Johnson writes that creativity happens when seemingly unrelated existing ideas collide to form new ideas. Number 8, use it or lose it. Creativity is a muscle that can be developed with constant exercise and healthy habits. Combining their research about creativity, Tony Schwartz and Swedish psychologist Anders Ericsson found that it's possible to build any given skill or capacity in the same systematic way we do a muscle. Push past your comfort zone and then rest. It's not inherited talent which determines how good we become at something, but rather how hard we're willing to work. Number 9, look outside. Most of my personal creativity comes from the world around me. The moment I try to get in the zone and start getting creative is typically the moment where I feel the creative block. Exploring the world eyes wide open will give you the creative fodder you need. Number 10, creativity is infinite. Everything you see is a creation. Whether you believe in a master creator or an evolution, it is all still creation. I can go off on a tangent, but rather I'm going to provide you a relevant Steve Jobs quote. Life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact. Everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you. Shake off this erroneous notion that life is there and you're just going to live in it versus make your mark upon it. Once you learn that, you will never be the same again. Number 11, use nature for inspiration. Have you looked outside recently? The world is full of awe, from the smallest of insects to the endless expanse that is the universe. Everything about nature is beautiful. There's no better inspiration. Number 12, it's a conscious decision. Creativity takes work, time, and energy. Being creative is a lifestyle choice. In the immortal words of Dr. Seuss, think left and think right and think low and think high. Oh, the things you can think if you try. Number 13, take notes all the time. I document everything. I have notebooks and jot down ideas. I use Keynote to sketch out product visions. I use Google Docs and have endless drafts for articles, books, and all of my writings, published and trashed. I save websites I like. I mock up stuff all the time, and I'm constantly taking notes about everything. And lastly, number 14. Now, the author has a word in here that begins with an F and ends with a K, but I'm going to change it slightly and say, the heck with opinion. Van Gogh, Thoreau, and Edgar Allan Poe, very alliterative, I might add, were all ahead of their time. Who's to say you aren't? Create what you want, write what you want to read, build what you want to use, cook what you want to eat, and share it with the world. If the world responds positively, cool. If not, who cares? At least you're doing what you enjoy. Maybe the future will appreciate you, and maybe not. Learn how to be creative for you. The Most Magnificent Thing by Ashley Spires. This is a regular girl and her best friend in the whole wide world. They do all kinds of things together. They race, they eat, they explore, they relax. She makes things, he unmakes things. One day, the girl has a wonderful idea. She is going to make the most magnificent thing. She knows just how it will look. She knows just how it will work. All she has to do is make it, and she makes things all the time. Easy peasy. First, she hires an assistant. Next, they gather their supplies. They set up somewhere out of the way and get to work. The girl tinkers and hammers and measures while her assistant pounces and growls and chews. When she's finished, she steps back to admire her work. She walks around one side. Her assistant examines the other side. It doesn't look right. Her assistant picks it up and gives it a shake. It doesn't feel right either. They are shocked to discover that the thing isn't magnificent or good. It isn't even kind of sort of okay. It is all wrong. The girl tosses it aside and gives it another go. She smooths and wrenches and fiddles. Her assistant circles and tugs and wags. When she's finished, she stands up and takes a long look at it. Her assistant gives it a nudge with his paw. The thing is still wrong. She decides to try again. The girl saws and glues and adjusts. She stands and examines and stares. She twists and tweaks and fastens. She fixes and straightens and studies. She tries all different ways to make it better. She makes it square. She makes it round. She gives it legs. She adds antenna. She makes it fuzzy. She makes it long, short, smooth and rough, big and small. One even smells of stinky cheese, but none of them are magnificent. Her hard work attracts a few admirers, but they don't understand. They can't see the magnificent thing that she has in her mind. She gets mad. The angrier she gets, the faster she works. She smashes pieces into shapes. She jams parts together. She pummels the little bits in. Her hands feel too big to work, and her brain is too full of all the not right thoughts. If only the thing would just work! Crunch. The pain starts in her finger. It rushes up to her brain, and she explodes. It is not her finest moment. I'm no good at this. I quit. Her assistant suggests a walk. It's not much help at first, but before long, she starts to feel different. Bit by bit, the mad gets pushed out of her head. As they stroll along, she comes across the first wrong thing she made. The bad feelings are about to start all over again. Then she notices something surprising. There are some parts of the wrong things that are really quite right. The bolts on one, the shape of another, the wheel-to-seat ratio of the next. There are all sorts of parts that she likes. By the time she reaches the end of the trail, she finally knows how to make the thing magnificent. She gets to work. She works carefully and slowly, tinkering, hammering, twisting, fiddling, gluing, painting. Her assistant makes sure there are no distractions. This is the perfect thing to ward off bears, says a man. This will stop that leak, says a woman. This one's all wet, says a kid. The afternoon fades into evening. Finally, she finishes. She alerts her assistant. The pair take a good long look. It leans a little to the left, and it's a bit heavier than expected. The color could use a bit of work too, but it's just what she wanted. They climb aboard and take it for a spin. They are not disappointed. It really is the most magnificent thing. The end. So I loved that little story, and I chose it because I could really relate to the little girl in that story about struggling, with my left brain, trying to analyze and organize, structure things, because that's what I do, right? I'm an academic, and I'm all about sort of this order and structure about how I have to approach things. And what I realized is when she relaxed and she settled into things, her right brain could take over and she could be more creative. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this in my message today about this idea of creativity, left brain, right brain stuff. And I'm trying to pull it all together to think about what it means for us as UUs. What does creativity mean to us? Because creativity is not unique necessarily to the Unitarian faith, but I think that we are open to more creativity in many respects because of what our belief systems are, because we are so open-minded about different paths to truth. But, I want to try to pull that all and weave that all together today for you. What I loved about the story was her frustration, right? And we've all been there. I've been there. You have no idea some days when I've been trying to do something and it's a creative outlet of some sort, and it's just been so frustrating that I gave up. And then I chilled for a while, I relaxed, I slept on it, and I decided, to try it again, to tackle it again. And I've brought a lot of creativity into my life, probably in the last few years. I would never say that I was a creative person myself. But I feel more creative as I get older because I'm putting less judgment on what it means to be creative and what it means for me to have a creative outlet, whatever that is. And I love the little girl because she really had enormous self-confidence. And I think back to the reading for today, right? About how children are incredibly creative, and then we get old and then we stop being creative because we've learned how to not be creative, as opposed to continuing to reinforce creativity and having that to be such an important part of our life, our existence, our day-to-day norms, if you will. And so the story and the reading just seem to gel so perfectly. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this idea of how do we bring more creativity into our lives, and particularly what does that mean for us as UUs. So going back to this thought about my own creativity, I have never thought of myself as a creative person. I've always been a bookworm. I've always been very, very left-brained, very studious, like going, memorizing things and learning things. I'm a scientist. It has to be methodical. It has to be organized. And one of the things I've realized as I've gotten older is science is, 50% structured, systematic approaches to things, and the other 50%, and it's probably more than 50% if you think about it. I'm thinking about it as a 50-50, but it's probably way more creative than I would have thought as I got into this process. And creativity is what drives the science. Creativity is what helps us to open up our minds to the possibilities of all sorts of things, whether that's walking on the moon or getting a multi-ton steel entity into the air flying, right? You had to have creativity in order to make those inventions, that scientific exploration, to work, right? And it takes then that methodical, left-brained approach to things, right? About how do we go about and systematically build this and explore this? And we have our trial and error, and we figure out this will work and this is not going to work. But it has to start with creativity. And when I finally figured that out in grad school, it was like it blew me away, right? Because I thought, oh, I've got to be really systematic about this stuff. And I'm like, I don't have to be. I got to start with the idea, the big thing, the so what, the why does it matter? And then from there, you sort of grow and you build and you learn how to do these things. So, my own feeling of just at a loss for my own creative outlets, I realized as I got into my graduate studies is I didn't have creative outlets. I have friends that, did lots of creative things. Some of them played violin, or they sang in choirs, or they were engaged in bicycle riding and competitive bicycle riding. They had outlets, and I really didn't feel like I had an outlet. And I had to learn as I got older where to tap into to rest my left brain and allow my right brain to just grow. And for those of you that may not be aware of this, our left brain is that very logical side of our brain. Left brain here, I'm not sure what you're seeing here in terms of the mirrored image here, but left brain here, where we're spending so much of our time thinking about logic and order and structure. And then the right brain is the creative side. It's the ideas, it's open to ideas, and it's open to abstract thought. And the left brain and the right brain have to work together. So what have I done for my own creative outlets? I started with photography because I loved photos and I really like expressing how I see things through the lens of the camera. And I'm not great at it. I'm not, but I love it. And it matters to me and it makes me happy. And I think that kind of goes back to the reading today. It's like, I don't care if I sell it or not. It matters to me and it makes me happy, and I'm going to continue to do that work. So I also love and appreciate when I see good artwork, good photography out there. It lifts my soul up. So also I've struggled, with figuring out again what my creative outlet is. And one of the things that I realized that I love to do is cooking. I love food. I love cooking. And it's become very apparent to me, particularly under the pandemic, about how important it is for me to have some sort of creative expression around what I cook, how I prepare, and to push my boundaries a little bit on this. I grew up, when I was in high school, I worked in an Italian bakery. Sam Scaglione was a great boss, and I loved working for him and his family, and I always felt nurtured and embraced by them, and I was a part of that large family. Then they really made me so very happy to be a part of that experience. And I was very inspired to learn how to do many of the things that were there. I wasn't really good at decorating cakes. So I figured, okay, not everybody's an artist. Bread making looked like a lot of fun, and I tried it a few times, and I'll be honest, I failed at it miserably. So I got to the point where, like the little girl in the story, I'm like, I quit. I'm done. I'm not going to do this. And I thought, might as well give it a try again. So I've been watching, with the inspiration of Tracy Howcoke, the British baking show, the baking competition, and I thought, I'm going to figure out how to do this. I'm so inspired by people baking and doing creative things. And then my friend Jennifer, who is a trained pastry chef, and she makes the most amazing things, and bread making and pastry making and desserts and jams and jellies. And I'm just like, I need to do this. So I decided in January, even before there was even a hint that we would be in a pandemic, that I was going to figure out how to make bread no matter what it would take me. And so I went out and I bought a bunch of yeast and a bunch of bread flour, and I said, all right, Berkeley, it's time to figure this out. And, because anytime I used to work, with yeast and dough and stuff like that, I would kill the yeast every single time. So I took a couple steps back and go, the water doesn't have to be that hot. I did a little reading on the internet. It's like water really just has to be like room temperature, if that much, right? I'm like, all right, I'll give it a try. And lo and behold, it worked. And I got it to make bread, and it tasted really good. It wasn't pretty, and I've gotten better at it and practiced more and more and more. And the same thing with jam making, right? Here's my jam. This is a jar of jam that looks a little darker because there's some caramelization in there. There's a lot of sugar in this. And I've had to cook this twice because I failed the first time and had to figure out how to make this work, and here's my little sourdough rolls. I've made some sourdough rolls. I'm feeling like with more practice, I'm expressing my interests, and I'm pushing myself in a way that I probably wouldn't have done otherwise. And I'm excited about it. When I first made jam, my grandmother made the most amazing jam. So I said, I'm going to make jam too, because grandma can do this. I'm going to do this. And I don't need grandma to make my jam for me. I'm going to make my own jam. And I failed so many times on doing it because I wasn't patient. I wasn't allowing creativity to flow. And my jam just failed. And so finally I figured it out. And again, even with a little trial and error, we make it work, and it works beautifully. So that's me. That's my story of creativity. I think I started tapping into my own creativity a few years ago when I was doing some work with a gentleman who used to be the chairman of the board of Pulaski Bank. It's no longer Pulaski Bank. I think it's Busey Bank now, but it was Pulaski Bank. And they were a big part of the St. Louis region for a long number of years. His parents had established the bank, and then he took it over, and then eventually he sold it off, and now it's Busey Bank. But Bill Donius, I got to know Bill through my advocacy work with the Human Rights Campaign, and he started diving into this work about non-dominant hand creativity and how to tap into more creative solutions to answering, business problems. He started doing this work when he was struggling with how to solve business dilemmas. And as the chairman of the board, figuring out what do I do? So we started doing this work on non-dominant hand work and how, left-handed people tended to be connected to their right brain, and right-handed people tend to be connected to their left brain. And there's a lot of great science behind this. So if it sounds a little weird and a little woo-woo, it's actually not. There's actually some really good science about how we can initiate more creativity. And so he sat and worked with me, and we were trying to work through some issues that I had that I really thought, I want to work on this. I want to see if I can get this figured out. And he said, well, let's do some non-dominant hand, work. And I start with answering my questions with my right hand. And he goes, now I want you to do it with your left hand. And so I started doing it with my left hand. He says, and don't worry about what your handwriting looks like. Just write it out. And I started doing that. And then he said, all of a sudden, he saw this like change come over me, like I was in the flow. And that I was just letting things fly from my right brain that I had not ever allowed myself to think, to be open up to. And I think that's the issue. I think I'm as a scientist, as an academic, I feel like I need to make sure everything is sort of logical and rational. And I forget that we need both. We need creativity and we need science, and we need both together to make good science, to help expand knowledge, to help people to grow. And I think that that's an important part of this marriage, that it's not one or the other, that we need both, one way or the other. So fast forward, I've started doing some of this stuff with my students in the classroom. I teach a class on decision making, as I know I've mentioned here before, and I know some of you know this already, just from personal experience with me. I teach a class on decision making. And decision making isn't just, here's the options, choose your option, here's your outcome, and you're done. That oftentimes we're making decisions with very little information and very little certainty. If I remember from a year ago doing a sermon on certainty and uncertainty, about we don't know what's ahead of us. We don't know what to expect. So how do we make a decision in that moment? It can be really paralyzing for us. And so one of the things that I wanted my students to start to learn how to do was to let go of the logic, and to not to always assume that something had to be rational and logical in order for us to be able to make a good decision, and to let go of this idea of the perfect solution, because perfection is the enemy of excellence, right? And I think that's kind of what that reading was getting at today. It's like, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to be creative and let the ideas flow. So I started implementing a couple of different things in my classroom. We do mindfulness in the classroom. I do mindful eating with my students, even my online students. Now, I don't know whether or not they actually do it. I don't actually make them record it, and from privacy issues, and some people get a little squirrely about stuff. So I don't have them record it, like I'm recording the sermon, but I do have them record what their reflections are. And I can tell when someone actually took it serious, when someone was like, I don't care anymore. But those that really took it serious, you read their reflections on things, and it was like mind-blowing to them. They're like, wow, I didn't realize this. I think about mindful eating. What does that mean for me to be more mindful in the way that I make decisions, to allow my mind to be opened, my heart to be open to new ways of thinking about things, and to new ways of coming up with creative solutions to problems. So mindfulness is a big part of that. And then I also when I do a live class, I do live improvisation with my students. I bring in improv experts. They help the students to learn how to do applied improvisation. And it's a load of fun. And I've done it a few times with the students myself. And sometimes I've just sat back and watched. And it's just such a delight to watch them, really get how important it is for us to be improvisational. And improvisation, we're all familiar with it, right? We're all familiar with Saturday Night Live and Second City in Chicago and Comedy Sports and Whose Line Is It Anyway, right? And it's designed in that respect for laughter. It's supposed to be comedic in the way that it's being used, but keep in mind that improvisation is not just about making sure that we're creating and eliciting a laugh from people. That's not the goal of improv. Improv is finding a way to connect with somebody else when there are barriers between us. And this came out of the work that was done in Hull House up in Chicago. Excuse me. And Viola Spolin, who initiated this idea of improvisation, she wasn't the first person to do it, but she's the first person to really put words around it and give it a name and then give it a structure, if you will, because improv is a lot of structure, believe it or not. And Viola Spolin was working in Hull House with immigrants who couldn't speak to each other. They didn't know how to connect to each other. And so she started using theater games, right? This idea of how do we connect with each other, and I make an offer to you and you accept that offer and you build on it and then you give it back to me and then I take it on and then I build on it some more and then I give it back to you. And so she was teaching them through these games how to work through difficult conversations, how to work through barriers, how to work and find common ground to work together as a unit to learn how to work with each other. And, you know, when you're dealing with people who have a hard time communicating to each other, they're struggling to learn, you know, language and all sorts of societal barriers that come attached to that. It's really powerful. It's really amazing. And you probably heard this term already. It's called yes and. And improvisation is based on this idea of, yes, I accept your gift, and I'm going to build on it, and I'm going to give it back to you, and we're going to make this thing, and we're going to have this thing grow and build and develop and become magnificent, like our story. The enemy of yes and is no but, or yes but, right? It's like, yeah, but, you know, that's going to shut people down. No is absolutely going to shut people down. And oftentimes when we are in places of ambiguity, when we have a lot of things swirling around us and we're so uncertain about what's ahead of us, we shut down and we say, no, 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 stop, no, we're done, right? We don't want to hear something that makes us uncomfortable or has to pull us out of the path, that well-worn path that we have been on for years, right? So the whole idea of yes and is, I don't have to necessarily agree, but I'm going to be open to hearing about it. And I'm going to be open to seeing if there are some nuggets in what you had to say that can work well with my nuggets, and that we can build something together. Think about the little girl, right? She goes on her walk. She's all frustrated. She walks around and she comes up on the pile of failures and goes, oh God, here we go again. All the things that I failed at. And then she goes, oh, that bolt could work. That shape could work. That color could work. And she improvisationally put those things together and made the magnificent thing that she was looking for. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is basically what the goal is with creativity. It's being open to new ideas. It's being open to what could be tossed at us as something new and exciting and awful scary, particularly when we try and we fail and we try and we fail. Being open to getting up and saying, all right, I'm going to go take a walk with my assistant, and we're going to walk around the neighborhood, and we're going to eat ice cream, and we're going to relax, and I'm going to take a nap, and I'm going to wake up, and I'm going to be open to seeing something new. Okay. So that's improvisation generally. And if we were live, I would take you all through some improvisational activities. It would be really fun. And maybe we'll get to do that eventually one day soon. But how does this all connect us to our 7 principles as you use, right? I'm not sure that there's any one specific way that it connects us to our principles, but I'm going to try to think about that and talk about that. I'm really sort of talking improvisationally here because I'm not sure that there's one way to think about this. when I think about our 7 principles, the things that probably leap out to me the most as more creative ways of being, or more improvisational ways of being, is that free and responsible search for truth and meaning, right? This idea that I am going to improvisationally work my way through all this stuff that I'm learning from my friends that sit in the pews next to me, or are virtually on the other end of this YouTube video, or who are or in the pulpit, who are sharing their thoughts and ideas with me. I don't have to agree with all of it, and a lot of it I don't necessarily agree with, but a lot of it I do. And I can take nuggets from this and find a creative way to figure out what I believe and what matters to me. And how can I connect with the people sitting next to me to figure out where this path is going and how do we make it work? And as Unitarians, I think that's what we're called to do. We're called to be out there, and it's our actions that matter, right? I mean, we talk about beliefs and actions, and it's like, you got to have actions in our point of view to be able to lead and to show people what it is that we believe, and we become the role models that we want the world to see, because we are willing to stand up and say, this is what I believe, and this is how I'm going to practice it, and this is how you're going to know what my faith is and what my belief is and what matters to me, by standing up and doing that. So I definitely see creativity in this idea of that free and responsible search. That's pretty clear. The inherent worth and dignity of others. How do we creatively think about honoring, the worth and dignity of everybody? And I'm not sure I have any answers for what that's going to look like, but I'm open to hearing what you guys have to say. Honestly, the inherent worth of dignity of every person is about valuing the differences that we bring to the table in some respects. And that even if I 100% disagree with you on things, that there's still some worth and dignity to you, and that I should be open to hearing, even if it's hard for me to do that, right? Justice and equity and compassion in human relations. That's creative also. The idea of yes and, of improvisation, is being open, right, to somebody else's point of view that I may not necessarily agree with, and I need to provide compassion for that. To assume positive intent, to find a way to work through conflicts and debates and issues and concerns in an open way. All sorts of things. I mean, I could go on, but the goal of a world community of peace, liberty, and justice for all. The only way we have a world community is if we are yes-anding and we are open to someone else's perspective, that we listen to what somebody else has to say and to try to figure out what their intention is. I'm not saying that, anybody who screams back at you that you're just some sort of horrible libtard and you don't know what you're talking about, that we need to engage with them. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is, when we're having an authentic conversation with someone who truly has diametrical beliefs from what we stand for, that it is, the onus is on us, right? To hear, to listen, to engage, to yes and, to say, cool, I hear you. That's a really interesting point of view. I'd like to learn more about that. Tell me more about what it is that you believe and why you believe that. What's underneath it? And hopefully we can get people to be able to respond that way. And I've had people where I've been able to have those conversations with, and it's been incredibly rewarding, because even if I don't agree with them, I know where they're coming from and I know where their heart is, and that's important. But I've also engaged with people who, even when I said I would love to hear more about why you believe that, I don't understand why you believe it. Can you tell me why you believe it? And I get shut down because they don't feel like they need to share with you why they believe it. They just believe it. And that becomes hard too, right? It's a two-way street. Any communication is two-way, but that doesn't mean that it should stop us from being open to the yes and to the creativity and to thinking about these things in creative and different ways. So I could go on and on about this for a while, which I know we don't have a ton of time to be able to do that. But I'm hoping that we can think about is, how can we bring more creativity to our dailiness as Unitarian Universalists? How can we bring creative ideas? How can we be creative role models? How can we walk our talk and also be open and to another point of view, to be creative in the way that we think about the world, and to come up with creative solutions to things. Because that's kind of where we're at right now, not only in the world, but also in our own congregation, right? We have challenges ahead. They're ambiguous, they are uncertain, and we need to figure out how to come up with creative solutions to bring our congregation together, to take a lead, to be the role models, to help our congregation to thrive. And the only way we do that is being open to new ideas, to new creative ideas, and listening without judgment to someone else's point of view. And it's going to be hard. But hopefully, I have faith in us, and I have faith in our ability to navigate this journey and to navigate what it means to be creative as Unitarians. If we can share disparate beliefs, we can share disparate solutions to problems that may be challenging. And I challenge all of us to put on our creative hats, to be more creative in our personal lives, whatever outlet that is. Don't let perfection, right? Don't let perfection interfere with your ability to be creative. Just do it. Stop judging yourself and allow yourself to be creative. And the more creative you allow yourself to be, the easier it becomes for us to be creative as a congregation, as a faith tradition, as a country, as a planet, whatever that might be. And maybe I'm a little Pollyanna, but I'm going to think positive and I'm going to hope for the best, that we can get through all the challenges that are ahead as we face upcoming elections and stuff, to make us be a creative and better place for everyone. Blessed be. Have a great day. We offer you the gentle reminder that this community of faith is supported only by your giving. We need each other, and in times of trial, we need each other even more. You can mail your gift to First Unitarian Church, Post Office Box 494, Alton, Illinois 62002. Or you can give electronically by searching for First Unitarian Church of Alton on the Givelify app or via the link on our webpage. Give what you will, for you are a generous people. If you know it, please join with me in our offering prayer. May this offering equip us to inspire love and seek justice. I hope that this time of reflection was fruitful for you. Perhaps you will share the fruits of your labor with someone significant to you. Also, I invite you to post your thoughts in the comments on this video. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel while you're here. Here are our announcements for the week. Please contact the church office if you have an event or an announcement that you would like us to share via our weekly Church This Week email. If you are interested in receiving our weekly email, please send your contact details to church@firstuualton.org. And remember to join us next week for our virtual service here on YouTube. And now, if you have a lit chalice or candle near you, I invite you to join me in extinguishing the chalice. The light of truth and meaning cannot be put out. We are keepers of this flame until we meet again. Our closing words are by John Murray. Go out into the highways and byways. Give the people something of our new vision. You may possess a small light, but uncover it. Let it shine. Use it in order to bring more light and understanding to the hearts and minds of men and women. Give them not hell, but hope and courage. Preach the kindness and everlasting love of the divine energy and the God of many names. Blessed be, and have a great week.